Welcome to the PCN Capitol Preview. I'm Larry Casper. Today we're talking about data centers coming to Pennsylvania. But first, we're joined by Jackson White, State Capitol reporter at WITF. Welcome to our program.
Hey, how are you doing?
Jackson, you filed a story about a plan that could help county governments and pre-K programs pay their bills while they're waiting for funds from the state. How will it work?
So Treasurer Stacey Garrity last week announced that her office was going to be offering, opening up these funds that her office has, $500 million to county governments and Head Start pre-K programs. So these county governments and the Head Start providers can go reach out to Garrity's office, and they can seek a loan at a 4.5% interest rate to cover their expenses until state lawmakers and Governor Shapiro can reach a deal on the late state budget.
How soon do the counties have to pay back this loan? You said something about the budget. When the budget is due, then shortly after that, they'll be expected to pay these loans back. Is there an exact number of days or a certain amount of time that has to elapse?
So as soon as the budget passes, they have 15 days to begin their payments on that interest rate.
And what kind of interest? This was announced a few days, Jackson. So how much interest is out there already for this program?
So a couple of counties spoke. A couple of county commissioners spoke in favor of the program during the press conference. It was the York County Commissioner, Montgomery County Commissioner, and the Lancaster County Commissioner. All three are Republicans, and it should be noted that Garrity is also a Republican. She's seeking the gubernatorial nomination to challenge Governor Shapiro next year. So Republican county commissioners are backing this program, and so it's a little unclear how many counties are really looking for this. The county association, the statewide association, spoke favorably for it. They're really teeing it up as sort of a lifeline for those that really need it. It's pretty clear that some counties are in desperate need of some of these funds. They're seeking private loans. And that's really what Garrity's office said they're trying to do here is replace those private loans and make sure that they're getting money from the Treasury instead of reaching some of these private loans that have higher interest rates or things like that.
Do we have any idea how Treasurer Garrity arrived at the figure of $500 million for this loan program?
No, we don't necessarily. My understanding is that it's coming from the Treasury Department's liquid asset pool. It has somewhere around $20 billion in there. The $500 million, their office said, is really supposed to be meeting some of the interest that they've heard from the counties and the Head Start providers. It's unclear right now whether that entire $500 million will be given out or if they're going to be seeking however much interest there is and maybe add to the program. The Garrity's office will be reaching out to the counties and Head Start providers directly, and they're obviously welcome to reach out to her office too. But right now, it's a little bit unclear what qualifies a county or a Head Start provider. The office didn't really mention what would qualify them, even though they did say in the press conference that not all counties and Head Start providers would qualify for the loans.
Let's reflect on the impact of the state budget impasse on the PA counties in general. Jackson, just how tough has it been for them?
Like I mentioned, some counties are considering tax increases. Some of them are taking out private loans to make sure that they can continue paying their employees. The county association, the statewide county association mentioned when I reached out to their executive director, Kyle Kopko, he was telling me about the 2015 budget impasse. It went 9 months, right? And he was saying after the 9 months, they had to lay off workers, and they really lost a lot of institutional knowledge that was difficult to bring back in once the funds from the state were secured. And he said that he's worried that similar outcome could happen this year. I mean, we're 3 months now without a state budget. Counties are missing out on all of that funding. I haven't seen any real estimates about how much money the counties are missing. I know school districts have calculated some numbers, but I'll have to look into that.
Pre-K programs, Jackson, can benefit from this program as well. And how are they getting by in the meantime?
There are similar reports that some pre-K programs are needing to shut down. I think there was one in York County I saw where it was reported actually had to just close its doors until they would get more money. And, there's sort of a trickle down effect, right? So when the state is offering this money to these programs, the Head Start program especially, parents are leaving their kids at daycare while they go to work. What is a parent going to do when a Head Start program has to close its doors for a couple of weeks, months until this budget impasse is resolved? But it's on the parent to figure out that that's sort of the daycare for their child. So there's a wide spanning impact when these late budgets happen for more than a couple of days past the July 1st deadline.
How did Treasurer Stacey Garrity get involved in this program in the first place? For example, did she receive direction from the governor?
No. So what was really surprising to many of the reporters and the government watchers last week was that Garrity is really stepping around the governor and the state legislature. When I reached out to comment from the House Democrats and Senate Republicans, there was sort of a long silent pause. I don't think that they necessarily knew much about this program. It seemed like she was jumping into it really at the direction of the county and the Head Start providers. That's what her office said, that they had been reaching out to her and she was trying to find a way that she could get her office involved. I mean, her office is involved with directing the state funds. So it really is, it seemed like she was looking for an opportunity, and this seemed what could be her chance to try and help these counties and Head Start providers.
Jackson, we only have about 30 seconds left. Last question. Treasurer Garrity is offering this solution while she's campaigning against Governor Shapiro. So given this situation, how well is she maintaining her balance?
So that she was asked about that in the press conference, sort of the optics around this. There was a couple of House Democratic lawmakers that mentioned, that this sort of looked like a conflict of interest, but Garrity denied that. She said that she was coming at this as a treasurer, that she didn't want to make this political, and that her campaign for governor would never influence her office's working collaboration with the governor's office, with Governor Shapiro's.
All right, thank you very much. Jackson White, State Capitol reporter at WITF. More of the PCN Capitol Preview after a short break. Welcome back. Our guests are Rob Altenburg, Senior Director of Energy and Climate at PennFuture, and Amy Brinton, Director of Government Affairs at the PA Chamber of Business and Industry. Welcome to you both. Amy, let's start with you. More data centers are coming to Pennsylvania, but let's start at the very beginning here. What is a data center and what does it do?
So data centers, I think most of us are familiar with kind of the broader concept of what they are. They're really the backbone of our modern lives, both economically and just in our everyday lives. They power everything from our cloud storage on our phones to laptops, gaming consoles, smart thermostats, Ring doorbells. All of these things use data centers and cloud computing is what.
This is computer infrastructure we're talking about, right?
Correct. And previously and historically, we've had these things, but now we're learning that the computing, having it all in one spot, is more efficient and more effective. So that's where the data centers come into play to help power our modern everyday lives.
How about you, Rob? What are your observations about data centers in general and letting our viewers know just what they do?
Well, yeah, so data centers, again, do pretty much everything, streaming content online and everything like that. What we're seeing now, though, is more of data centers being used for artificial intelligence. We're seeing more data centers be built. They're being built larger, and with those larger data centers, they're having a much higher energy demand. So while we've had them for a long time, the character of data centers has been changing in really the past couple of years now.
So let's talk about the presence of data centers in Pennsylvania today. Approximately how many are they? How big are they? How can we spot one from the highway? What's distinctive about its appearance?
I think there are a number of them, and there are a lot more that are being proposed over, we've had back in June the announcement of $90.5 billion in potential investment the Pennsylvania's economy with these proposed data center projects. There are some that already exist. They basically look like a warehouse that you would see driving down the highway. And again, we're looking at the fact that they are powering all of our modern day needs as they expand.
Well, what do we know about the investment that is to come to Pennsylvania? I think you said $90 billion in investment. And I heard that some data centers are planned for south central Pennsylvania. What can you tell us, and how do they compare to the data centers we already have? In other words, you already pointed out that these things are getting bigger.
So with the potential investment, so that's been announced, right? So there have only been a few that are actually going to come to fruition at this point. These are, I think there are some up in the Scranton area. There's one out in Western PA that are being proposed. Those are definite. The others have just been proposed at this point. We really don't have the confirmation that those projects are going to come to fruition. But we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to kind of drive those projects because of the economic benefits that come with these.
And we'll get to that for sure.
Right.
And let's talk more about the size of data centers that are proposed and how they compare to what we already have now. Still trying to get a mental picture here. This is something that resembles a warehouse, like Amy said, but it could be as big as a football field or larger.
Much larger. Yeah, the largest data centers now are roughly 4 times the size of Central Park in New York. So they're truly, truly enormous, the largest hyperscaler data centers. We're not seeing, the one proposed campus in Homer City, Pennsylvania, that's the size you're talking about, thousands of acres, over 3,000 acres on that size. We don't see a lot of that in Pennsylvania yet. Right now in our region, Virginia is the leader in terms of energy demand. They've got about 5 gigawatts worth of data centers. We have about double that people have proposed. And we might be seeing, potentially much more than that. Our grid operator says around our whole power grid, we could be seeing as much as 30 gigawatts worth of data centers. So much, much more than we have now.
So tell me more about how AI is driving the proposed construction of these data centers. It just means we need more computers, I guess. To a layman like me, that's the way I would put it.
Well, the AI systems are just much more power hungry. If you think of a Google search,
that helps.
It doesn't take a lot of energy, and they search many billions of searches in seconds. AI can do similar things, sometimes better, sometimes worse, but it takes a lot more energy to do it, and that's why we're seeing this big expansion. And you're seeing it in the big companies, Meta, Google, Microsoft, are really driving a lot of these really large data center projects.
And I think what you see there too is a realization in these developments, so the developers realize the energy demand. So they're trying their best to bring or co-locate their own energy sources. Take, for instance, the Homer City project. And not only are they utilizing their own energy source, they're taking what was formerly a coal-fired power plant site, which is a brownfield. So that's another benefit of some of these data center projects is they're kind of looking for places that are beneficial to kind of revitalize the brownfields. So they're taking this coal-fired power plant and turning it into a natural gas-fired power plant, which is cleaner energy, and then they're using it to power that data center project. You have the Crane Energy Center in TMI that's coming back online. That project is, nuclear power is 100% carbon-free. So you've got cleaner energy powering the AI project that is associated with that Crane Clean Energy Center.
What do we know about the arrangement at opening up TMI nuclear plant in South Central Pennsylvania? They have a partner here. Like you were pointing out, there's somebody who specifically wants that energy. So who's the company?
Microsoft has signed a contract with Constellation for the energy. This is being directed to one of their data centers in Virginia, so it's not for a Pennsylvania project. We don't know a lot of the details yet. The project seems to be moving forward, though.
Does anybody have any idea when TMI could be back online for this purpose?
There were reports that it could be online as early as 2028. Whether or not they reach
Still
that target,
away.
there's a lot of steps that would need to go, hurdles they would need to clear to be able to bring it back online.
Nuclear Regulatory Commission comes to mind. They would have to approve a plan like this, right?
Certainly.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the criteria companies use for selecting sites for data centers. So we already have some in Pennsylvania. What are companies looking for? Can they be located anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world, and be just as effective? Or are there certain advantages to being in Pennsylvania?
Well, right now, like I said, in our region, most of the data centers are being located in Virginia. A lot of that was certainly availability of power, although the Dominion energy system is being swamped with the data centers now, and that's why they're looking further afield. So it sounds like
Virginia might be better able to meet the demand to power these places?
They had been the choice for data centers locating. What we're seeing now is data centers looking further afield from Virginia. They certainly are looking at skilled technical workers. They're looking at availability of land. They're looking at energy prices, and a number of other reasons. Proximity to where they're being used in some cases helps.
And I think in Pennsylvania's case, the reason why, as Rob alluded to or stated, that a lot of these data centers are currently in Virginia. Loudoun County actually is one of the biggest data center, they call it Data Center Alley. But you've got a renewed focus on location, and people and developers are focusing, companies are focusing on Pennsylvania because we are so uniquely situated. We have an abundant energy resource, a broad mix of energy resources, where Pennsylvania is the #1 electricity producer or exporter, in the country, #2 in natural gas production, and #3 in energy production in the country. So I think that is key for a lot of these very energy intensive data centers. They're looking at Pennsylvania because we have these amazing energy resources and abundance of water, and location-wise, again, to the brownfields and the areas. If you look up in Lycoming, Lackawanna area, a lot of formerly coal-fired power plant locations are kind of in the sites of some of these proposed projects.
Here's what I learned preparing for this show. Pennsylvania has 71 data centers, and they use, this is the interesting part to me, they use 3.2% of the state's energy. To me, a layman, that sounds like a lot. What do you say, Rob?
That's quite a lot. And now, most of those data centers are quite small. We do have a few very large installations that are engaged in crypto mining that use quite a lot of energy. So some of that, when you see the term data center, I don't generally lump in the crypto miners, the Bitcoin miners, with the AI systems and things like that. But when you see numbers like that, it's probably including those numbers as well.
And I understand data centers use a lot of water.
It depends on the design. You can have a system that has closed loop cooling.
What do they do with all that water, Rob?
It depends on the system. You have open loop systems where they're just evaporators, where the water can go out the stack or it can actually be returned to streams. You can have more closed loop systems, which look more like really large air conditioning systems. Closed loop has some benefits, less water consumption. You can make the facility smaller, pack things closer together, but then it's more expensive. You also have a lot of data centers, smaller ones that are air cooled, that don't require water at all.
Yeah, I think 80% of water in data centers up to 80% is evaporated, which really minimizes the water demand locally. And in fact, when looking at Virginia and the data centers in Virginia, it was something like 83% of those data centers use no more water than what a large office building would use.
Yeah, although there are some of the large hyperscaler data centers that use millions and millions of gallons a day.
I wonder if
consumptive
local
use of
residents
water.
experience any decrease in water pressure when they live near a place that big.
It could depend on the system, and this is a lot of the environmental issues that we see around these proposed projects right now. There's concerns, but we don't have the details yet. So are they pulling water from groundwater? Are they pulling them from surface sources? What are the systems that are going to be used? And there's not a lot of regulation around that right now in the data center field.
And most of the companies they realize these impacts, and they realize the environmental concerns, which all of us are concerned with. But I know they're looking at pioneering just different technologies to address the issue. I know some are looking at waterless cooling, and of course some of them use the recycled water, and then closed loop systems also.
So technology and regulation will have to catch up with these places.
Right. Yep.
As far as the use of electricity is concerned, now we've established that big data centers use a lot of water. The demand on electricity, is that similar? Would you find it proportionate, Rob, do you know?
Well, the potential demand is really incredibly high. So our grid operator has said they're looking at potentially 30 gigawatts of growth in data centers. A very, very large power plant is 1 gigawatt. The Homer City project would be the largest gas-fired power plant in the country, is a 4 gigawatt project. So this is an enormous amount of power that these data centers would consume. So there's a big question of where the power is coming from. There's also a big question about when you pull that much power from the grid, what's that going to do to consumer prices? And we are already seeing huge consumer impacts from some of the data center projects that haven't even been built yet.
Well, sorry.
No, go ahead, Amy, please.
So I think when we're talking about energy and energy demand of the data centers, yes, it's going to be an increase on the grid. But when we're looking at how power and electric prices, it's supply and demand currently, right? So a lot of them are bringing their own power sources with them. So that's going to alleviate some of the price concerns. The demand right now, the reason that we are having increased energy prices, or we're seeing an increase in energy prices, is largely due to the fact that we had a lot of what we call reliable baseload or dispatchable energy. That is your natural gas, your coal-fired power plants, nuclear, not the intermittent resources. So those dispatchable, reliable sources, we don't have enough to power our current demand of electricity. We saw a lot of coal-fired power plants come off of the grid just due to economic reasons, with the increased requirements for carbon capture was costing them more, so it wasn't economically feasible for some of these coal-fired power plants to stay online. So as they come off, these are giant chunks of electricity from our grid, and you can't easily fill that giant hole, we'll call it, just for simplification's sake. You can't fill a giant hole in our grid with intermittent resources. So we need more of the base load power to fill in that gap.
How unusual is the arrangement between Microsoft and 3 Mile Island?
As far as?
Well, are there other similar arrangements in the state where a plant that was offline, nuclear or otherwise, is going to come back online in order to accommodate a giant data center?
There are no proposed projects like that. We talked about the Homer City project. That project has closed. The existing coal plant has gone away and doesn't exist anymore. So they're really rebuilding from scratch in a lot of cases on there. TMI was really a fluke, but I do have to take exception to one of the things that Amy had said here. Intermittent power is not the cause of prices going up. The single largest factor in our electric prices going up is because gas power is unreliable. We found this out in Winter Storm Elliott in 2022. There was a winter storm, a grid emergency. 24% of all the power on the grid failed. and 70% of the failures were gas plants. So what's the problem has been is we've been over-reliant on unreliable gas plants, and because of that, we've been forced to buy additional capacity to make up for these unreliable plants. We can operate data centers using clean generation. We saw this Wisconsin, the Microsoft project in Wisconsin has committed to putting clean generation on the grid for every watt they use. It can be done. We just don't have projects in Pennsylvania that are looking at that.
I'm not saying that intermittent resources are the reason that our prices are increasing. It's the supply and demand is what my basic kind of what I was trying to say. The fact that we don't have the reliable resources that we need. When you're looking at electricity and energy, when an electron is created, it needs to be used right away. We're an all of the above energy supporter. I'd love to see the intermittent resources, solar, wind, the renewables plugged in. But unfortunately, technology for battery storage just does not have the capability to power the entire grid. So that's why you need natural gas, coal, nuclear, those reliable base loads to kind of serve as your base. And then, in the summer when, the sun is shining and solar is producing electricity, we have an increased demand as well, too. Air conditioning, cooling systems. So that's when the intermittent resources really get to play and shine. But again, I'm not saying that's the cause. It's just the supply and demand and those reliable sources of energy that we have.
Amy, you're from the State Chamber. What are the economic benefits of having giant data centers come to Pennsylvania?
So the economic benefits of data centers, they're catalyzed broader economic growth in Pennsylvania. I talked about $90.5 billion in potential investments. So that brings jobs. It brings a demand for steel, HVAC, electrical components. They also are anchors for technology ecosystems. So, driving innovation, attracting startup companies, R&D.
It doesn't hurt, they'll pay taxes in the local economy.
Exactly. So not only do you have the jobs, you have the taxes, and you have the tax base, the property tax revenue. And I think that's one thing that's really being missed from this conversation when we're talking about data centers is that, and again, I mentioned that brownfield, some of these properties haven't been on the tax rolls in years. So you have these data center companies coming in and essentially revitalizing spots or plots of land that maybe can't even be redeveloped for a residential purpose or commercial purpose. And they're getting these properties back on the tax rolls and giving, funding schools and infrastructure for, tens of millions of dollars in some of these projects.
Go ahead, Rob. I know you wanted to make a point.
Yeah, there are certainly some challenges with that, and with data centers in particular. In a data center, often where the data center is located and where the pollution and where the impacts are located are different. So what we see is the school district where that data center is located might be seeing a tax benefit, but consumers much further afield are seeing increased costs on their power bill because of the data center. They're seeing impacts from the pollution, and just relying on that increased tax revenue isn't necessarily putting that money with the people that we're seeing the impact.
All right, thank you very much, Rob and Amy. I'm going to give you a break just for a minute while we look at program notes for here on PCN. On the Issues has the first in our series featuring the candidates in November's general election. Dan Miller, a Democrat running on the Republican ballot for mayor of Harrisburg, will be here on Wednesday at 7 p.m. Then right after that, we'll turn from the election to the recent elimination of federal tax credits for clean energy projects. Flora Cardoni from Penn Environment will explain Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. Journalist Roundtable will have John Finnerty from Capitol Wire State Affairs, Aaliyah Schneider from the Philadelphia Inquirer, and Justin Schweitzer from City and State PA. They'll tell us about the latest news from Harrisburg on Thursday at 7 o'clock p.m. Now, on to the history and culture side of programming. The art of Andy Warhol will be examined on Tuesday at 8 p.m. Then you can hear about the experience of Civil War soldiers who fought at Antietam. That's on Saturday at 2 p.m. Inside the Lines returns to PCN. A preview of the Phillies playoff is in store for you. That'll be Friday at 6 p.m. A football game of the week will have Ephrata versus Cocalico, courtesy of Blue Ridge 11 in Ephrata. They kick off Friday at 7 p.m. Then there's more football, Wilson versus Hempfield, courtesy of High School Sports Live. That'll be on Saturday at 7 p.m. And you can watch this show and all our public affairs programming free of charge by visiting PCNSelect.com. While you're there, you can download our streaming service, PCN Select. PCN is Everything Pennsylvania. We're a 501c3 nonprofit television network that relies on viewers like you. To make a donation, visit PCNTV.com. All right, we're talking about data centers with our guest today. And let's, before we go on with economic benefits and even possible environmental challenges with data centers, let's consider what it's like to live near a data center. In other words, residents might have concerns about noise, or maybe it's an eyesore. Can you give me any insight on what it's like to live near one of these giant data centers, Rob?
Certainly, it depends on the data center. So when we talk some of the crypto projects in particular, we've been hearing a lot of consumer complaints about residents near Virginia facilities said it's like a jet engine that never stops, the whining from the cooling fans on that. Your much larger data centers, especially if they're going to be water cooled, they're not going to be as loud. It's going to be like a large warehouse in the area with potentially less of the truck traffic.
It sounds like they're already identifying some troubles and correcting them as they go. That's good news for residents as far as noise is concerned.
Well, and I think a lot of these companies are very cognizant of this. They're very, they want to be good partners in the community. I know, for example, Amazon, I know they do a lot when working with their community partners. If there are noise issues with some of their data centers, they do all they can to identify, maybe it's something out of the ordinary, like a broken electrical component, or, they are very diligent in kind of trying to address issues that might be problems, rectify them. They also are very interactive with the community. They do a lot of philanthropy and get involved in the community that they are located in, again, to be good neighborhood partners.
Although there may be some, particularly if they use on-site generation and on-site backup generation, that could be gas combustion turbines, or that could be really large diesel engines. There could certainly be pollution impacts from that right next to the data center, as well as noise associated with that.
While bringing up residents' concerns, it makes me think of a checklist, Rob, that PennFuture has put together for local governments if they're considering a data center that could potentially be a neighbor there. So how was that list put together? And I know that power consumption, and we already talked about noise at data centers. What else, Rob, is on that list that governments should make sure they check the box before they agree to have a data center?
Well, that came out of a lot of the work that we've done on warehouses and a lot of the similar facilities. So we are concerned about, water consumption, whether we have the local infrastructure to support the data centers, how the land is being used, and that can create issues with runoff and a number of other issues like that. Just a whole long list of things.
Well, I understand that you might call in. It might be a good idea for a government to call in an expert and analyze the noise situation and give them something objective, like a rate in decibels of what they'd be dealing with.
Yeah, I think we're seeing less noise complaints with the large data centers. Those are more with the small air-cooled data centers, but it is certainly a factor.
What about the appearance of these places? Are residents able to get along with these places aesthetically? What are you hearing?
I mean, they look like large warehouses. They look like just large buildings. I mean, certainly.
So you could easily mistake it for a warehouse.
And you probably do.
Yeah. And I think with the data centers too, one of the things, positive things is, you look at the giant warehouses and everybody says, oh, here comes another giant warehouse.
Sure.
Something that's not associated with the data centers are the impact on the roads and from additional truck traffic. They essentially are a stand-up warehouse type building that just exists.
I can see traffic being a concern at a warehouse, trucks going back and
Right.
forth, but I don't envision a lot of truck
No.
traffic at a data center, right?
No, exactly.
And about how many people work in your average data center anyway? I'm imagining a place that's gigantic, spans a couple football fields, and maybe they only need a handful of people to run the place?
It depends on the size, but most data centers are used tens of employees. The very large ones may be hundreds. But it doesn't take a tremendous amount of employees to staff a data center.
And something I think that's important when you think about that, it doesn't sound like a lot, but in fact, for every one data center employee, there are 6 downstream jobs that are created from that one, kind of like a supply chain type job or employment. So
Jobs
it's not
that might
just,
not be obvious right away.
Right, exactly.
Let's talk some more about that checklist for local governments, Rob. I understand there's advice about limiting the height of a data center to 60 feet and having the setback 200 feet from houses. And that reminds me of what you said a few minutes ago about some of these checklist items are based on existing checklist items you already had about warehouses.
Yes.
And that just makes these places easier to live with.
Yes.
And as far as, let's talk more about potential economic impact, Amy. Does Pennsylvania have any particular advantages as far as attractive real estate, for example? If you're buying a lot of real estate, obviously you want to buy it cheap.
Of course, I kind of already spoke to that a little earlier, is the fact that, we are very rich in energy resources, water resources, and the land. We've got a lot of land.
I'm talking about the land, the real estate itself.
Yeah. We have an abundance of land. And again, we are looking at some of these places who, former coal-fired power plants, different industrial sites that may have been abandoned are being revitalized. And again, the economic benefit is to putting those back on the tax rolls and getting the property tax revenue from that.
One of Governor Shapiro's priorities has been speeding up the permit process, and my understanding is that progress has indeed happened in that department. So what's the effect then on potential data center locating here? Can they expect a speedy approval process? Do you know, Rob?
Well, the permitting is probably not going to be the delay on a lot of these things. So what we're seeing now is not the data centers so much saying we want to locate here in Pennsylvania. What we're seeing is companies that want to build gas-fired power plants saying we want to build gas plants and data centers are the reason we want to build them. They've got some challenges building these plants. There's a backlog of the gas turbines. If they're going to connect to the grid, it could take as long as 5 years to interconnect to our power grid right now. So we have some serious challenges getting new generation on the grid. Now, the available power we have is right now our queue and our interconnection queue is overwhelmingly it's solar and storage. Only a few fossil facilities on that. So there are, a lot of challenges getting new generation on the grid.
And to the SPEED program, the chamber was very instrumental in working with the administration and the governor and the legislature last session to get that enacted into law. And we were thrilled that it has already, it was launched, I think, the end of July. And what it is a third-party approval process for the permitting process in Pennsylvania for various permits, DEP permits, land, air, water. So we're really excited. It really hasn't had a lot of time to kind of, it's only been since July that it's actually started. So we're really excited to see how that helps foster economic growth in these projects coming to Pennsylvania.
Is there any data center in Pennsylvania at this moment breaking ground that we know about? I'm just trying to keep as up to date on progress as possible.
Not that I'm aware of actually the newer ones. I mean, obviously there are existing ones. The ones that have been proposed, like I said, I think there's one at the Susquehanna power plant up at northeast Pennsylvania. We've got the Homer City power plant down in western Pennsylvania, the Crane Energy Center, but nothing has actually broken ground yet. We're still working on permits.
And I will say, even though the data center is not breaking down, we are seeing the expense. So there was a recent report from the Union of Concerned Scientists that across our grid in 2024, we spent $4 billion on infrastructure improvements for data centers. And this is really
like what, for instance, Rob?
Well, you have to, the distribution system that gets the power to the data center has to be able to handle that load. So we saw, for example, in PPL territory, they just went to our grid operator just recently and said they essentially need 5 gigawatts worth of improvements. And that's going to come with an expense. This $4 billion, now this is money that's already been spent, and this is money that we are paying for right now out of our pocket. The data centers aren't necessarily there yet. So this is one of the concerns that we have about these projects, is we are spending money to bring these data centers in. If they don't come, what's happening to those stranded costs? Who's going to be left paying for that? There's a proposal at the Public Utility Commission to do a large load tariff that might address some of these issues, but we don't have clarity on it. And so right now, it's consumers that are holding the bag for this.
Well, and one thing I would kind of not necessarily argue, but I would retort that a benefit of having these data centers is the investment in infrastructure. And the way that it works in data centers and utility costs is something called cost allocation. So customers, residents aren't going to have to pay for any kind of cost of facility that's exclusively for these data centers. Shared investments are allocated across rate cases, or rate classes, I'm sorry. So you won't see the residential rates go up because of a data center related facility. The shared or common costs that we will end up having to be part of our bill will actually benefit us. So we'll benefit from, improved capacity, reliability, transmission reinforcement, regional distribution improvements. And again, this is proportionate to how each class uses and benefits from the system. And this approach isn't new. Utilities in Pennsylvania have long gone through this rate-making process, and that's approved through the PUC. And that same process applies regardless of whether the customer is a household, hospital, manufacturer, or a data center.
It's not quite that cut and dry. Consumers do end up paying more, and especially in the stranded cost case where projects are built and then the data center doesn't show up or the project doesn't show up. The utility is going to have to recover that money and cost sometimes. And we could say that, well, the consumer has the benefit of increased capacity, but I don't need increased capacity for my house, and I don't really particularly want to be paying for it.
Right. Well, you've introduced the possibility that some of these data centers propose to come here, but they might not at the last minute. Is that a real consideration that we have to think about?
It's almost certainly the case. So as I said, our grid operator has said 30 gigawatts worth of new load from data centers. They traditionally have overestimated growth. I mean, is it possible that we could see that? Yes, it's possible. But it's very likely that a lot of these projects won't end up getting built.
We talked about Governor Shapiro and the legislature, and we also talked about regulation and technology keeping up with the demands of data centers. So it makes me think about the legislature right in Harrisburg. And are there any bills out there that are anticipating the growth of data centers in Pennsylvania? Are lawmakers getting into this and trying to anticipate things?
Yeah, we're seeing a couple different examples, and we're seeing examples on different sides. We've seen bills that want to create, they say, a regulatory sandbox that lowers the regulation on data centers.
Oh, now say that one more time slowly.
A regulatory sandbox, so just allowing them a period of time where there won't be as much regulation and limiting the ability for local regulation of data centers. So we're seeing that. On the other side, we're seeing bills that are asking the Public Utility Commission to look at how stranded costs are dealt with, the increased costs of what it's going to do to the increased costs for consumers. So as Amy mentioned, a lot of these data centers are bringing their own power, like in a combustion turbine. A combustion turbine costs 2 to 4 times as much as the equivalent solar. These are not things that the data center is going to run 24/7. They're going to buy cheap power from the grid when it's cheap, and they're going to run their combustion turbine when the grid is expensive. So what that's going to do is create higher prices across the grid for everybody. How are we going to deal with that in a situation where we already have a huge number of people in energy poverty and can't afford their power bills? So there are bills now that are looking at things like our low-income heating assistance program, expanding it to the summer, and doing other things to address the burden that ratepayers are going to have because of data centers.
Well, and I think some of the legislation too in the sandbox, it's Senate Bill 939 from Senator Rothman, creates a regulatory sandbox. But what that is basically like a safe testing zone for these projects. So it's not just kind of letting them have a free-for-all and giving them less regulation. It's kind of, think of it like training wheels. It gives innovators room to grow without running into a wall of red tape, so that they can, if it works, then it can scale. If not, then the regulators step in and kind of pull things back. So we're also on the other side, looking at on the regulatory side of the other bill that Rob was talking about. So that would create for the PUC to kind of regulate these data projects, but it's a lot more complicated. It's not as cut and dry because in Pennsylvania, we're a deregulated state. So you have to take into consideration that there are customers who are shop for their electricity. And I know there are issues and concerns with that legislation that it may not impact them the same way that conceptually was intended to do. So I think there are some that are concerned with some of the concepts that we're looking at. Another piece of legislation Governor Shapiro has as part of his lightning plan is the Reset Board. We've been very supportive of the Reset legislation that creates a board, and it's not just for projects like data centers, but it's also to get more power on the grid. So any kind of additional generation projects would kind of go through this or be looked at by this board approval permitting process.
Rob, we're almost at the end of our segment. Take about 1 minute and tell our viewers the message you'd like to leave them about as they consider the prospect of more data centers in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I think we need to be concerned. I mean, we've heard this story before about this new project bringing economic development. We saw it in the gas industry. Gas fracking communities are underperforming the rest of the state. We saw it in the Shell cracker plant. We invested over $1 billion in the Shell cracker plant. Now Shell wants to sell the plant. The promised growth never happened. We're hearing another promise that this growth is going to happen. So I think what we need to do is take a hard look at it and say, let's look at our opportunities for economic development. Certainly, let's make some investments in economic development, and that's fine. But what happens if the growth doesn't happen? What are we going to be left with in terms of pollution and cost?
How about you, Amy? What message do you want to leave with our viewers about data centers?
So I think one important thing to remember is data centers are here regardless. They're coming, whether Pennsylvania is the one that harnesses and takes advantage of having these projects come to our state and benefit our citizens is what we need to take into consideration. I mean, we've always been a leader in industrial innovation, from manufacturing to steel to energy, and data centers are the next chapter in this legacy. And Pennsylvania is uniquely positioned to get that investment into our economy.
All right, our guests have been Rob Altenburg, Senior Director of Energy and Climate at PennFuture, and Amy Brinton, Director of Government Affairs at the PA Chamber of Business and Industry. Thank you both for being here.
Thanks.
PCN's Ellen Franz talked to Representative Nikki Rivera about her bill that bans using artificial intelligence as teachers in charter schools.
Welcome to our program. You've recently introduced legislation to prevent charter schools from using AI to teach. What inspired you to create this bill?
Well, I happen to be the representative for House District 96, which includes Lancaster City. And earlier this year, Lancaster City received an application from a school that wanted to use AI as the primary teacher and not use certified teachers along with the program. They wanted to use guides, human guides. That was a big red flag for our school district. And of course, those proposals and applications take a lot of time and resources away from our district to ultimately say no, because we are a human-centered educational system. And so we recognize that AI is a phenomenal tool to use, but the central force in a classroom is a certified teacher. As a teacher myself for the last 30 years, when I was talking over this idea and the denial of this application, it made complete sense to not divert school resources toward applications like this when our schools are inequitably funded and resources are few and far between at this point anyway. Until we get up to fair funding, we can't throw another wrench into the system. So that was the impetus for putting forth this legislation.
And what concerns you about AI teachers?
Well, the same thing that would concern me about AI parents, AI friends, AI everything as the center point of someone's life. Public education is based on human interaction. We've got a lot of resources put into building the whole child. And while AI can certainly deliver information and evoke emotion and inspire in some ways, it doesn't replace a person. So I really think there's a place for AI. We've been using AI for decades. And again, it's another tool in the toolbox. I would hate to see it replace a certified teacher. We need those people.
This bill only applies to charter schools. Will it eventually apply to public schools as well?
Those details are being worked out by the experts. I am a source for implementation of policy and regulations and laws, but I am not the expert. I don't pretend to be. So those folks are working that out. I did consult with my 3 superintendents in my school district, along with the Education Association, and those folks have access to the other branches of experts in this field. So I'm going to follow the experts' leads just like I would in any other situation. And we'll take it from there. So those details haven't been hashed out yet. Just floating the idea among my colleagues is the first step.
Do other states have a legislation like this in place?
Good question. I am not sure about that. I know that as the AI plane is being built, we're also building guidelines around it. Just with anything, we don't understand the significance or the impact of something when it first comes about. Just like with vehicles, we didn't have seat belts back in the day. We evolved into those. So we're building those guidelines as we go. PSEA, as well as our superintendents associations, are always looking into other states and seeing what other people are doing to use best practices. I certainly wouldn't want to implement something that has negative impact on our public school students, but I think the research supports that human interaction and educating the whole child is what we go for when it comes to educating the masses.
You mentioned talking with superintendents. What feedback have you heard from the education crowd or parents?
Well, I'm glad you asked about all realms. From the parent side, I have heard from parents that they are not looking for their kids to spend more screen time. They're looking for more playtime and the normal developmental human growth that happens while utilizing technology to help build the human brain. We all can utilize technology in really great ways to become more knowledgeable and more informed, and that's what parents are looking for. And when it comes to our superintendents, I have received the feedback that our certified teachers are the central focus of our programs. And I think if I can predict the future, I'm very hopeful, and I really can't express enough how much I hope the kids 30 years from now are referring to their favorite teacher, human being that inspired them to build their career in whatever they've chosen. I know they'll look back at AI as a great tool, just like I used my GPS to get anywhere I need to go. That's a fantastic tool, but there's ultimately a person involved in what I'm about to do, regardless of the endeavor.
Lastly, where is this bill in the legislative process currently?
It is still garnering support. It has a lot of support among my colleagues. I do intend to try to reach out to the other side of the aisle to inspire some of my colleagues to join in on the human touch of education and to make sure that our resources are not being diverted toward non-human strategies for educating our children.
Representative Nikki Rivera, thank you for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks to Ellen for that interview. Before we go, a reminder about On the Issues. We'll launch our series featuring the candidates in November's general election. Dan Miller, a Democrat running on the Republican ballot for mayor of Harrisburg, will be here on Wednesday at 7 p.m. Then right after that, we'll turn from the election to the recent elimination of federal tax credits for clean energy projects. Flora Cardoni from Penn Environment will explain Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. That's it for the PCN Capitol Preview. I'm Larry Casper. Thanks for watching.